You couldn't normally do that. Normally the free economy would constrict the money supply into mortgaging. Someone would start betting against it. Some brilliant person out there would start saying, there's too many mortgages going out. I'm going to start betting in the other direction against more mortgages. And it would become more and more costly for you to loan more and more money out. It just couldn't happen. This could only happen with the Federal Reserve, first of all, able to borrow the money endlessly, and with the government behind it making the laws saying you have to borrow this money to poor people or people who don't have the money to make a down payment with it, or people who can't verify their income. You have to sell a certain amount to them as well. So basically that Fair Housing Act was such a disaster because of the controls on the economy and the control of the Federal Reserve. Now we're going to go to, as I say, the good part, the meaty part. We're going to imagine a graph. And on this graph we've got, oh, by the way, Aristotle. I didn't mention that in the other video where I introduced the apartment, a picture of a bust of Aristotle. Okay, and on this graph we've got the interest rate on the vertical and the long-term deposits on the horizontal. Now, short-term deposits cannot be borrowed out very effectively by the bank because they may be used up next week or something, you know. So it's long-term deposits that really matter to a bank on how much money they can borrow out. You know that currently the law is 10 to 1. Back in the 1800s, a lot of banks were leveraged 4 to 1. So at $25 you would borrow out 75. Now that's very different from the law now. The law today, if you've ever wondered why is our law 9 to 1 or whatever, 10 to 1, not because that's a perfect number or anything, just because the politicians said that'd be nice. But back when the private economy did it, get this, some banks charged you to hold your money. Deposit 100, we'll give you back 99. Sound familiar? It's kind of like ATM fees and stuff like that. For the convenience of knowing that your money's here on a shelf, you know, rather than hopefully we'll have some money when you come back and want your money. So there were some banks that were not leveraged, and you would find that in a free market. But today, it's legal for any bank to leverage 9 to 1, or 10 to 1, 10%, whatever it is. So the longer term deposits are going to mean more money to borrow out. So on our little interest rate graph, let's say the interest rate goes up, up, up. It's 5%, let's say, and it's gone up relatively over the last few years. The number of long-term deposits is going to go this way. How? Now, what do people do with money that they borrow? I know that a lot of money does get borrowed to buy a four-wheeler, let's say, or a new stereo, but those are actually minuscule purposes. Even the purchase of a car, and we talked earlier about why a house is considered consumption, so purchasing houses is long-term, but that's not an investment that gobbles up money. Let's put our houses in our pocket as one thing that these long-term deposits might be borrowed out on. What other things might these long-term deposits be borrowed out on? And it turns out that they are oftentimes borrowed out, now even if it's borrowed out on a four-wheeler, so that the family now has this four-wheeler to drive and they have to pay us $3,000 off over the next couple of years, even that is productive in a sense, because the parents who bought the four-wheeler for the family now have to work harder at work, and they have to forego spending elsewhere to make payments on this. So the work they did somewhere in the economy, working at 7-Eleven or the grocery store or whatever, translated into money which went in a check to the bank. So loaning that money out to them did make them produce things in the economy for others. So in that sense it was productive. But long-term deposits on our graph over here, long-term deposits and large amounts of money are often borrowed out in productive enterprises. Like I said, purchasing a four-wheeler is productive, but if I borrow $50,000, let's say, to start a grocery store, and I pay that back, now there's a grocery store, there's infrastructure in the local community, there are jobs. Or let's say I borrow this money to start a chainsaw sharpening business. And now me and my buddy buy a lot of stuff through the mail, UPS or whatever, stimulates the economy more. We're sharpening chains, we're making money, people are buying our product, and we're stimulating the economy by all the stuff we order and stuff, and advertising and so on, and we're making a living off of it. So borrowing money and putting them into long-term productive enterprises is something that happens when am I going to go to the bank and borrow money? I've got my idea, and I go to the bank, and they're paying 5% interest right now for deposits. So I'm going to obviously have to pay them more than that to borrow it. Probably 7 if I've got extraordinarily good credit. Probably more like 8 or maybe even 10 if the bank can't discount like that and has to make a fat profit, or wants to, because the market's tight and they know I'll have to pay that somewhere, and why not here? Whatever. Let's say the bank then borrows me at 10% interest now. That money. Well, geez, 10%. I don't know. I think I'll put it off for a few months. Okay. So now people are depositing their money at 5%. Yay, 5%. That's a good return. And the bank can't find anybody to loan it out to at 10. So guess what the bank does? It drops the interest rate down to 4% and starts offering loans at 8. Aha! I say I'll take 100 grand. So some loans start getting made. Aha! Now, what do people who have thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars to invest or to put in the bank, people who aren't borrowing money but have money, they've got their choices in this economy. Let's fast forward, say, a year from where we started. They've got their choices in this economy, which is growing and bustling now. Interest rates come down to 4 and then 8 to borrow. And people who were going to put it in the bank at 5%, now they say, oh, 4%? That's, you know, I might as well get that new boat I wanted if they're only going to pay me 4% to deposit, right? So now he's buying a boat, and this guy over here is buying a whole bunch of new bookcases and nice new furniture. There's no reason really to borrow your money to the bank at 4% compared to at 5%. So you're going to sit on it more. So our number of long-term deposits on our little graph is going to start coming down. Now that's going to make the bank say, oh no, deposits are going down, we've got people borrowing money. In fact, now everyone's trying to borrow money because everybody's been spending their money, and so everyone's trying to get into business of some kind or other. Geez, everyone's borrowing money, we better raise the interest rate. And what do you know? They raise the interest rate, start cutting down the number of loans that they're giving out, and people start coming back, oh man, 5%? I'm gonna delay the purchase of that second boat. Or I'm not gonna make the boathouse over this year, I'm just gonna stay with the old boathouse, I'm gonna deposit this money for now. What do you know? Deposits start going up again. Now, that's obvious when you think about it. But that's not the function the Federal Reserve gives. It says when we want more people to borrow more money, what do? We lower the interest rate. And that means that you can borrow money cheaply, but you shouldn't be able to borrow money that cheaply. It's like someone must be printing this money. Money doesn't grow on trees, as we've heard. Our fathers have told us that when we want to spend too much or something. Money doesn't grow on trees. The Federal Reserve thinks it does. Where does all that money come from? If you're going to borrow it to people at 3%, you must be getting depositors to put it in for really, really cheap. 0.5%? Why would depositors put it in? So, as interest rates get this low as they are today, or years as low as they were in the late 90s, when interest rates come down that low, people stop depositing their money and they start buying stuff in the economy and consuming. There's no reason to deposit your money. You're not getting paid anything for it anyways. You might as well go on vacation or get a boat or buy a third house, or go on a vacation and get a boat and buy a third house maybe. So that would restrict the number of deposits being made and increase the amount that has to be paid in order to get more deposits in so we can keep the thing going. So, as long as the Federal Reserve is setting that rate, and no, the 5% is not magical. If they would set it at 5% forever, that would be a disaster as well.